This is, we're going to continue on the last days Babylon, and we will, this will be part 2. So if you missed last week, it is on video. Watch last week and then watch this week. It's on the last days Babylon, which I believe is America. You know, I know it doesn't sound very patriotic, but I love this country. I'd die for this country. But America's evolving. America's metamorphosing into something else. That's what I believe. And Mystery Babylon, we pointed out last week, shows up 3 times in the Bible, at the beginning, the middle, and the end. And in the end, it's called the mystery. And if we're in the last times, Mystery Babylon has to exist, or it has to be on the verge of existing. That's all. It's always a great city, and it's always a great country. So there's lots of things we're going to look at. And this time, we're going to go, well, just read that. We've changed the presentation a little bit from PowerPoint to what you're seeing on the screen now is actually, not only is it for us, but it's designed for people who watch it from home so they can see it a little better. And it's just better optics. It's easy. They can follow it easier because there's so much scripture that we're using. Now, let me read. The present day America is transforming into the final phase of Daniel's 4th kingdom. Last week I tried to painstakingly show that the mystery Babylon and the Babylon the city and Babylon the kingdom, they're all related, but they're all part of the Daniel's 4th kingdom in prophecy. America is evolving politically, morally, and socially into something unrecognizable to the way the country was even 20 years ago. The unstoppable metamorphosis is well underway. All right? So that's my theory. That's what's happening. It's happening all over the world. But there has to be a country in the end that is more powerful, more prestigious, has more money and everything, because that's what Babylon is. There's all kinds of factors that go into identifying Babylon. All right? And Daniel 7:23 through 25. Thus he said, the 4th beast shall be the 4th kingdom upon the earth, which shall be diverse from all kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth, and shall tread it down and break it in pieces. And the 10 horns out of this kingdom are 10 kings that shall arise, and another shall rise after them, and he shall be diverse from the first, and he shall subdue the first 3 kings, and he shall speak great words against the Most High. One of the things that's important about, over and over again throughout Daniel's description of the final kingdom, as well as the Apostle John's description of Babylon in Revelation 17 and 18, and even throughout several other places, there's 10 toes in Daniel's vision. The 10 toes and the 10 horns and the 10 kings are all talking about the same thing as you go back and forth from Daniel and the book of Revelation. All right. We are on the brink, as is the whole world, of an economic collapse. Nobody's paying off this debt, these trillions of dollars worth of debt. People say, well, we can't keep borrowing against the debt. One of the reasons so many people don't care about the debt because it's impossible. It'd be like me telling you that you give me $3 billion and I'll pay your house off. Well, that's not going to happen, especially when you're already on Social Security. My point is the debt's astronomical. Nobody's paying it off. And they keep saying we're borrowing money. From who? Who? There's no Asian investor. China's in debt. China's economy's in trouble. Who are they borrowing this trillions of dollars from? I want you just to think about that. It's a big Ponzi scheme. It doesn't exist. And someday it's going to collapse. Sooner or later, somebody has got to just stop it. The only person who can fix the world's economy, the only person who can fix America's economy is the Antichrist. And more than any, and without, the Antichrist changes everything. Without taking his number, you can't buy or sell, right? So that's a pretty good description of economics right there. So that's what I think. I think it's hopeless. I think you should vote for the best you can and pray and go to church and then start witnessing again, because this world is not our home. Amen. And this world's in trouble. Serious, serious trouble. Okay, America's economic collapse changes everything. The greatest market on earth is broke. Europe is bankrupt. Asia loses her marketplace. Desperate conditions necessitate a new world order. Much of the world, nations will surrender much of their sovereign status just to survive. With no one to buy the world's goods, unsold products are left on the docks. The cascading economic disaster gets worse and worse. So again, when we identify Babylon, Babylon is always, from the days of Nebuchadnezzar till now, it's a country that consumes the majority of the world's goods. Well, what country is the consumer? It gets very, very, to me it gets obvious. China isn't consuming everything, they're selling everything. Rome doesn't consume that much compared to us. If America goes broke, the world goes broke. And I don't even think we're going to have time to talk about reserve currency, but the reserve currency, which is held by America, is all countries, to make a long story short, all the countries have to trade in US dollars. Doesn't matter if they hate us or not. We have the reserve currency. And in the world's economy, that's a big deal. Okay. Jeremiah chapters 50 and 51 are historical and prophetic. Without a doubt, although the chapters are directly related to Nebuchadnezzar's Babylon, right? Historically, that's what it's about. I'm not changing that. But there are passages throughout Jeremiah chapter 50 and 51 that cannot be applied to Nebuchadnezzar's Babylon, and I'm going to show you why. And if they're not applied to Nebuchadnezzar's Babylon, then they have to be applied to the final Babylon, because that's where they fit. Everything in Scripture has a spiritual application, it has a historical application, and it has a doctrinal application. What I'm saying is there's some lines or some passages throughout Jeremiah 50 and 51 that have to deal with the last days Babylon. There's no way you can fit them in to Nebuchadnezzar's Babylon. Daniel's fourth kingdom is Babylon depicted in Revelation 18. This study will focus on some of those passages, all right? Remember, when I say Babylon, it's also the fourth kingdom. They're synonymous. They're synonymous. Jeremiah 54 through 7. In those days and at that time, this is Jeremiah, and Jeremiah is a contemporary of ancient Babylon. But Jeremiah starts this, he says, in those days and at that time, saith Lord, the children of Israel shall come, and the children of Judah together, going and weeping, they shall go and seek the Lord their God. They shall ask the way to Zion with their faces thitherward, saying, come and let us join ourselves to the Lord in a perpetual covenant that shall not be forgotten. All right. We'll talk about this, but I want you to see it. Historically, in historical Nebuchadnezzar's Babylon, Judah, the country of Judah, was taken captive into Babylon. Everybody with me? That's the 70-year captivity of Judah inside Babylon. But observe that Israel and Judah seek God together. Israel's another country. Israel, you have to get specific when you're trying to understand especially history and prophecy. You got your 10 tribes, your northern kingdom, and then you got Benjamin and Judah, and Jerusalem, which was a separate nation, and Israel divided a long time ago, and they won't get back together until the millennium. That's very important. They're not officially back together until the millennium. Observe Israel and Judah seek God together. In those days and at that time, Israel and Judah are back together. Jews returning to Israel under Ezra and Nehemiah were from Judah's Babylonian captivity only. I have to say that because Jews do go back to Israel after the Babylonian captivity, but under Ezra and Nehemiah. But still, the Jews are not all together at that time. So the Jews, all 12 tribes, are seeking the Lord together. Now that doesn't happen until the millennium. So here's a passage right here that we have conflict with historical Babylon. Furthermore, only a remnant returned in historical Babylon. Thus, this prophecy awaits fulfillment. Jeremiah 50:13. Because of the wrath of the Lord, it shall not be inhabited. Now he's talking about Babylon. Jeremiah is giving these prophecies against Babylon. Okay? And now Jeremiah is going to make this statement. Jeremiah is one of the prophets, too. If you read the beginning of Jeremiah, it says he's a prophet to the nations. He's not just a prophet to Judah. He's not just a prophet to Israel. He's a prophet to the world. Jeremiah is a special kind of prophet. He really is. There's a lot of what Jeremiah addresses that has to do pertinent information with what's going on now. Okay. Because of the wrath of the Lord, it shall not be inhabited, Babylon, but it shall be wholly desolate. Everyone that goeth by Babylon shall be astonished and hiss at her plagues. Jeremiah 50:39 through 40. Therefore the wild beasts of the desert with the wild beasts of the islands shall dwell there, and the owls shall dwell therein, and there shall be no more inhabited forever. The judgments coming on Babylon will make it uninhabitable forever. Neither shall it be dwelt in from generation to generation. And just so we get the point, as God overthrew Sodom and Gomorrah and the neighbor cities thereof, saith the Lord, so shall no man abide there, neither shall any son of man dwell therein. Now, you know what happened to Sodom and Gomorrah, Admah and Zeboam. We're not even sure where it is. We geologists have gone, yeah, it was probably right here. That's what uninhabited means. Sodom and Gomorrah are uninhabited. And God uses interesting illustration to compare it to. But this is what he says, so you get it. All right. The problem with attributing these verses to Nebuchadnezzar's Babylon, in a doctrinal sense, that was 600 BC-ish, is that after being defeated by the Medes and the Persians, remember the Medes and the Persians conquered Babylon? Well, they moved right in. Babylon, ancient Babylon, stayed inhabited and populated for another 200-300 years. Now, that's a big deal when you're trying to figure out prophecy. It wasn't uninhabited. Actually, Alexander the Great, who comes in like around 350 BC, he dies there. Hundreds of years later. So what are you going to do with a verse that says Babylon shall be destroyed like Sodom and Gomorrah, nobody's even inhabiting it, and how are you going to make that Nebuchadnezzar's Babylon? Yes, they were defeated. Yes, historically, these passages are about the demise of the Babylonian Empire back in 600 BC. But what are you going to do with a verse like this? Whatever happens to this Babylon is finished, man. Okay. Okay. Jeremiah 50:19 through 20. And I will bring Israel again to his habitation. Okay, Israel is again coming to his habitation. God's going to bring him back to the land. And he shall feed on Carmel and Bashan, and his soul shall be satisfied upon Mount Ephraim and Gilead. In those days and at that time, again, saith the Lord, the iniquity of Israel shall be sought for, and there shall be none. And the sins of Judah, and they shall not be found, for I will pardon them whom I reserve. This is actually a proof text. Because what's the purpose of the tribulation, class? To save Israel. So Israel turns to the Lord. Israel's sins and her full pardon comes during the tribulation, right at the end. In those days and at this time, all of Israel is totally forgiven. If we go back to Ezra and Nehemiah, you say, well, it's about them going back to that remnant of people going back under the priest and the prophet. No, Nehemiah, no, it's not. It can't be. Because their sins weren't all pardoned. Their sins weren't forgiven at that time. In fact, they were even a mess once they went back. And what kind of shape morally and spiritually were the Jews in when Jesus came at his first advent? Which is, 400 years after they went back. It was a mess, right? They said, we don't want Jesus. They rejected their Messiah, right? So their sins aren't pardoned, nor are they all forgiven when they go back under Ezra and Nehemiah. I hope, can you follow that? Are we following that? This passage doesn't apply. The Jews are totally forgiven when God brings them back, starting in the tribulation and back into the millennium. That's when Israel, all 12 tribes, are forgiven. All right. Jeremiah 51:13. O thou that dwellest upon many waters. Now he's talking to Babylon. The prophet's addressing Babylon. O thou that dwellest upon many waters, abundant in treasures, thine end is come, and the measure of thy covetousness. The Lord of the hosts has sworn by himself, saying, surely I will fill thee with men as with caterpillars, and they shall lift up a shout against thee. All right, now, if I had the PowerPoint, which I don't, I would show you a map of Babylon. But I think you're familiar enough with world geography to know this. When you think of the Middle East, when you think of Iraq, that's where ancient Babylon was. Do you think a land of many waters? Are they dwelling on many waters? No, they're not. How in the world can this be applied geographically, if nothing else, to ancient Babylon? This Babylon dwells on many waters. Now think in your head, just imagine a map of America. I've got a map someday, I'll show it to you. It's got all the rivers. It's just laced with rivers, the whole country. There's rivers everywhere. Plus, we're surrounded by the oceans. We've got the greatest harbors and port cities in the world. America's got everything going for it. It really does. If there's a nation God should expect something out of, it's this one. And I don't think Christianity founded America, but I do think Christians were very involved in its establishment. And for the first 150 years, yeah, it was solid. They had a lot of issues. But Christianity was a big deal. We're in a post-Christian era now. Okay. O thou that dwellest upon many waters, abundant in treasures. Is Iraq today abundant in treasures? Are we? Thine end is come, and the measure of thy covetousness. The Lord of hosts has sworn by himself, saying, surely I will fill thee with men as with caterpillars, and they shall lift up a shout against thee. The last days, Babylon becomes a money pot for mingled or diverse people living inside the nation. An economic free-for-all as the great nation is plundered. Jeremiah 50:37. A sword is upon their horses and upon their chariots and upon all the mingled people that are in the midst of her. And they shall become as women. A sword is upon her treasures, and they shall be robbed. Bunch of mingled people inside this great Babylon who are plundering its wealth. Sound like the news? It's not just mingled people plundering it either. There's plenty of indigenous Americans doing the same thing, and I'm not referring to Indians. Jeremiah 50:26. Come against her from the utmost border. Open her storehouses. Cast her up as heaps and destroy her utterly. Let nothing of her be left. Here again, this is like the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. Jeremiah 50:32. And the most proud shall stumble and fall, and none shall raise him up. And I will kindle a fire in his cities, and it shall devour all around about him. The most proud. I've mentioned before, a politician can hardly open his mouth or her mouth without saying how great we are. We're the greatest. I've watched the speeches go on in Europe. It reminded me of Muhammad Ali's fight. Some of you remember that? Remember how he used to come out and say how great he was? That's what we sound like to the rest of the world. Even if you are the greatest country in the world, you don't have to tell everybody. You meet somebody from Switzerland, you don't have to say that. Okay. Did I read 32? And the most proud shall stumble and fall, and none shall raise them up. I will kindle a fire in the cities. Yes, I did. All right. The final condition of the fourth kingdom is described as a beast. It implements a global governing system dividing the world into 10 political regions. 10 governors lead these territories while remaining subservient to the fourth kingdom. America exists in one of those regions in a dominant hegemony form. And what a hegemony is you have a series of nations. It can be 2 to 3, it can be 15, 20. And one country is kind of the boss. Everybody knows that. There's a lot of countries, Shiite Muslim countries in the Middle East, but we all know that Iran's the boss. You with me? So there's your hegemony as far as that. They're the boss, but there's other so-called quote-unquote sovereign nations. But they all listen to Iran. All right. Okay. The army, dominant hegemony form exists, exercising world economic control largely through the abilities of one individual. That individual will be the Antichrist. But America's a hegemony right now because we have reserve currency and we are so powerful and we consume so many goods. There's countries that have to listen to us whether they want to or not. Okay. The Army, the Marines, and the Air Force and the Navy give the beast its iron teeth. Imagine, if you will, now think of the metamorphosis I think America's going through. Imagine, if you will, a government that gives its military power over to the United Nations. Just imagine. Do you think the United Nations could do what it wants? Sure they could. Sure they could. Okay. So that's what I see happening. I think it's happening now, but it's on the verge. It'll completely come into fruition very soon. Very soon. And careful reading of these. The United Nations has divided the world into a 10 regional map with, they call them economic regions. There's 10 of them. And they want leaders for those regions. And those will be the 10 kings that'll take over. America's in one of those regions. And those 10 kings, by the way, show up before the Antichrist. So that could happen before the rapture. In fact, it will. My opinion. Okay. After the new global government is in place, the Antichrist appears. He establishes himself dictator with 10 subordinate kings. Insatiably opposed to God's righteousness, Antichrist changes laws and legislates sin. knowing God will destroy Babylon, the most powerful, influential city on the earth. See, it's also a city. You got to be careful. Is he talking about the city or is he talking about a country? All right. Antichrist moves his seat of power to Jerusalem. Quite possibly, the United Nations moves to Jerusalem or the West Bank years before this happens. Such a move seeks to calm down an hysterically violent Middle East and appears conciliatory to Americans who want the UN out of New York. The move facilitates the coming abomination of desolation by giving Antichrist access to a rebuilt Jerusalem temple. The city of the great king is Jerusalem. Jesus will sit in Jerusalem and he will rule the universe. Where does the Antichrist want to get to? He wants to get to Jerusalem. He wants what Jesus is going to get. He wants to sit on a throne in Jerusalem. And that's what's going to happen. So I think it's inevitable that all this stuff will move over there, start its transition over there. Plus, the Antichrist knows that New York, which I think is the city Babylon, will be destroyed. Okay. Okay. The last Babylonian metropolis, New York City, world banking is paramount in New York. That's where the most important economic stuff is. Remember, he doesn't, without doing what the Antichrist says, you can't buy or sell. All right. So more than anything else, the Antichrist is an economist. He's the only one that can fix the world. He's the only one that can fix it. You know, I get a real kick out about some of these commercials now about old rich guys telling me to buy gold. You know, I'm not rich, but I'm old. And I'm not going to put any of my faith in gold. Well, good for you. I mean, it's just, when the whole system changes over, everybody, whatever you have, stocks, cash, or gold, you're going to have to turn it in or you won't get anything for it. Because all that's going to matter is what that number is on a computer manifest or your laptop in your bank account. Nothing else will exist. That's almost where we are now. You know. All right, the world banking is paramount in New York, as is Wall Street, the world's most important stock market. The city is the economic heartbeat for America, and America is the economic heartbeat for the world. The World Trade Center is in New York. So is the Community of Foreign Relations, which is nothing less than the evolved Illuminati. If you know, that's another sermon. Most importantly, the United Nations is in New York. Already providing the skeletal framework for world government, the UN alone should identify New York as the last days Babylon. My opinion. When the Antichrist takes over, he will be in walking distance of the institutions running the world. He will also control the world's most powerful military, America's Army, Navy, Marines, and Air Force. If any other city in this earth had all those institutions in one place, preachers would be screaming, that's Babylon. Add to that the most powerful army in the world. Add to that the reserve currency. What is it? You think after the rapture, some huge country and big city is just going to appear? I mean, at some place, logic has to intersect with our biblical understanding of prophecy. Okay. Well, we don't see it, because this is not a popular position. Why does God destroy Babylon? Jeremiah 50, 11, 12. Now, this is for all the Babylons. But we're going to seek these patterns. Okay, if someday what's left of America is going to remind people of Sodom and Gomorrah, well, why did he do it? Why does he do it? Are we that bad? You know. So let's look for a moral explanation. If America is it, if New York is it, why does God wipe it out the way he's going to? Because you were glad, because you rejoiced, O destroyers of my heritage, because you are grown fat as the heifer at grass and bellow as bulls. Your mother shall be sore confounded. She that bare you shall be ashamed. Behold, the hindermost of the nations shall be a wilderness, a dry land, and a desert. The hindermost of the nations, that's a little tough, but what I think, America is the most recent great nation. Okay, all the other nations, you go Europe, Middle East, all that stuff's established. The hindermost of the nations, the last great empire would be America. That's how I think one should interpret that. The mother being ashamed, well, Great Britain birthed us, basically. Maybe prophet's talking about Great Britain being ashamed. I don't know, though. I just thought I'd give you that. Anyway, God names three things as his heritage. Babylon, Nimrod's Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar's Babylon, and Mystery Babylon, and the country are destroyed because they mocked and destroyed God's heritage. Now, I like that the prophet told us that, because the Bible mentions three things as heritage, as God's heritage. God's words, the Bible, children, and Israel. Those are three things that God says, these are my heritage. Okay? So let's fill this out a little bit. The Bible. Psalms 119, 111. Thy testimonies have I taken, and heritage forever. Testimonies are the words from the great word of God, Psalm 119. For they are the rejoicing of my heart. Psalms 12, 6, and 7. The words of the Lord are pure words. As silver tried in a furnace of earth, purified 7 times. Thou shalt keep them, O Lord. Thou shalt preserve them from this generation forever. Now, this isn't real popular, but consider America's Bible colleges. Start with the Baptists. The professors, the teachers, the Bible scholars, the writers, pastors, and their incessant correction of the Scriptures. We haven't even gotten to the major population, which is 75% of the rest of the country. What do they think about the Bible? What do people who believe in evolution think about the Bible? They believe it's wrong. In the beginning, God didn't create the heaven. In the beginning, evolution brought it all forth. I actually in college, I read a textbook. I should have brought it in for you. It says, in the beginning, the Big Bang brought forth life, light, and matter. Wow. It was quite a big bang, wasn't it? But they even printed it as a verse. Okay. How well are we taking care of the Bible, Americans? How well? That's the heritage. Okay? Children. Children are a heritage of the Lord, and the fruit of the womb is his reward. We all know that. Okay, America. How well are we taking care of our children? And people can say, well, the rest of the world doesn't do much better. Well, okay, but I'm not talking about the rest of the world. But they're not as bad as we are. America aborts 1 million babies a year. 1 million. And the primary reason? Birth control. I'm not talking about, well, the mother would die, or rape or incest. They always throw that at you. They put out like 0.02% of all the abortions to justify 99% of them. How are we? Add to that child pornography, which is billions and billions of dollars a year industry and growing rapidly. Human trafficking. And what do we teach? Add to that what they learn in public school and on the streets and everything else. How well are we taking care of our kids? Well, they're strike two. Israel, I will bring you into the land concerning the which I did swear to give it to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. I will give it to you for a heritage. I am the Lord. They break in pieces thy people, O Lord. They afflict thine heritage. Right to the end times, last days. I will gather all nations and will bring them down to the valley of Jehoshaphat. This is Armageddon. And will plead with them there for my people and for my heritage, Israel, whom they have scattered among the nations. Now, we have some hope with Israel. As of 2024, America has not tried to destroy Israel. However, America's friendship toward Israel is changing. You notice that? Our relationship with Israel is not as solid as it used to be. Israel depends on the United States more than anyone else. A breach in our alliance could be disastrous for America. Look what's happening in the campuses. It's already started up in September. Anti-Semitism grows every day. Less and less people are concerned about Israel, especially because it's tied to the Bible. They think that's ridiculous. Go tell somebody that, well, Israel is God's people, you know. See how that flies at your next school board meeting. Okay. That's good. We're just about out of time anyway, but we could be very close to what amounts to a total abandonment of Israel. We could be. And then it's finished. Then we're finished. That's the only part of the heritage that we haven't totally annihilated. Something to think about, isn't it? Something to think about. The younger generation, ask people under 50 what they think about Israel. Ask people under 40. Ask people in college. They don't care about it. Israel's causing so many problems. It always has. It always has, and it always will. It's all about Israel. No matter who wants to interpret history, no matter what you believe about the Bible, no matter what you believe your politics, it's always about the Middle East. It's always about Israel, specifically Jerusalem. God said he'd make Jerusalem a burdensome stone for the whole world, and that's where we are. That's where we are right now. Israel's about to do something, if they haven't already done it, that'll turn the whole world against them. And they'll have to come to blows with Israel.